You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
There we go. So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, March 26th, 2026 at 7:41 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And I thought that I would talk a little bit about parenting. Secure parenting is always the question. Um, I remember when I was up at Berkeley doing the Attachment Institute with Mary Main and Eric Hesse. I was talking to her about the work that we do, which is the reparenting through ideal parent figure protocol, the development of mentalizing and emotional regulation strategies through the use of meditation practices, and the psychoeducation around um, what secure functioning relationships are supposed to look like. If you grow up, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, in a family system where you're not receiving the instruction in how secure relationships function, you don't know. And so, how are you going to find out? You're going to have to learn about the notions of secure functioning relationships, and then you're going to have to develop the skills to be able to do it. But she was very pessimistic about the idea that you could take somebody who had no instruction in childhood around secure functioning relationships and retrain them later. And I think that was largely because conventional psychotherapeutic strategies had, up until that time, not worked very well in changing people's attachment conditioning. And really, I think that that's probably still true. Uh, the addition of ideal parent figure protocol has changed that, but you still have to do the mentalization training and the emotional regulation training, and you still have to understand the nature of uh, secure functioning relationships. She thought that our efforts should be really focused on teaching secure parenting strategies to uh, insecure and disorganized people, so that when they bring up their children, they bring them up in a way that produces native security, which she thought, or at least she said, that the amount of resources that it takes to reparent somebody and to retrain them into security was beyond what we could reasonably do. But we might be able to um, afford, as a society, uh, teaching parenting skills in a way that would produce security. It's an interesting thing about parenting. Um, there's a It's almost an old idea of children as a chattel, really, where the parents have the absolute right to raise the child in any way that they want to, as if they were somehow independent of the rest of us. Uh, and if something goes wrong and they're not resourced, of course, the rest of the society has to come in and take care of it. And to the extent that we do, of course, in our culture, we don't really do that much. Um, uh, as I like to harp on this, the yearly cost for medium security prison in California is 55,000 a year. The average sentence in California is 9.5 years. So um, more than the tuition for undergraduate masters and maybe even a doctorate degree. Uh, and we pay about 7 or 8 thousand a year to school people, school children. So obviously, if it wasn't so lucrative to run prisons, we would probably reorient that in a way. Um, all right, that's my gripe. I'll leave it there. But how would it, how would childhood appear? Uh, what is it that looks like that astonishingly low bar of 30% of the time the child's needs are met? Um, or a shorthand would be when your child needs to be picked up, you pick them up, and when your child needs to be put down, you put them down. Um, really, the that first few months of life is that transition from the womb into the world itself, and a lot of attention, a lot of care that's necessary, really, to produce in the child an expectation that their needs will be met. Doesn't sound so astonishing, except when you are around infants and the demand is unrelenting. If you don't have enough care, if you don't have enough resources, if there aren't enough people around to help you, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the experience of doing that. If you don't have secure attachment instruction under your belt already, then how are you going to come up with uh, the way to respond to your child when they need something? Uh, the child expresses, and the caregiver attunes to the child, pays attention to the child, empathetically connects to the child, attempts to understand what the expression of the child means. Then they mirror back to the child a sense that they understand what's happening, and then they respond with the care that the child is requesting. And the child has a sense that I can ask the world for my needs to be met, and somebody will pay attention to me and somebody will meet my needs. As the infant develops and they move into, 3 to 5 months old, something in that range, to begin to understand that specific people are coming, and then they begin to develop a preference for some people over others. I think that we talk about it as the child picking their caregiver, their primary caregiver, and then learning from the caregiver what the caregiver has to teach. If it's a first child, of course, you don't have a database of understanding of how to respond. And what the mind does is it looks into the procedural database of how to do these things. And if there isn't an entry where you're the caregiver caring for a child, but it can find an entry where you were the child cared for by somebody that's close enough, then it will just flip it, and you will become your caregiver and your child will become you, and you'll transmit to the child the care that you got. It's the way that these attachment responses are just passed down generation by generation. You have an 85% chance of inheriting the attachment strategy of your primary caregiver, but you have a 70% chance of inheriting the attachment strategy of your great grandmother. That's 4 generations out. So it is very stable and it's passed down in these ways. So you pick your kid up when they need to be picked up. That is to say, the attachment system goes off, they rush to you, they seek protection and comfort, and you provide that for them. And then as soon as that settles and the attachment system turns off, the exploration system turns on, and you put them down, and then you encourage them to continue to play, to explore, paying attention to them and what it is that interests them and what it is that matters to them. And as the capacity of the child increases, you make the range for them, the space for them, bigger. Uh, in some sense, I like the way Winnicott talks about this, is that when the child feels a sense of safety in the caregiver, they don't need to be vigilant about the environment. And so, in that protective space between the child and the caregiver, exploration happens. The child can absorb in exploring and discovering the things that they want to know because they have a sense that the environment is protected for them. And if they don't have that sense and the environment isn't protected, then the child has to be vigilant about the environment that they're in, and that keeps the exploration system from activating, depending on what happens in that relationship. In insecure attachment, of course, when the child is convinced that there's no way to get response, a meaningful response from their caregivers, uh, they become avoidant. And when uh, the care is unpredictable and, in some sense, chaotic, they become ambivalent as children. And if the environment is frightening, they become disorganized. Who did?
Hey George, the who was the person you were mentioning who was skeptical of the intervention? I think Bessel in Body Keeps the Score, the book, also mentioned something similar, but it was related with something else. That people, if you don't have that experience, it's hard for them to imagine or feel that experience.
Right.
Um, so I
Well,
could see why their initial thought.
well, I would also think that, uh, what is it? We've had 150 years of psychoanalysis, right? 150 years of therapy. Would you uh, um, care to posit how much less fucked up the world is? That's where I think that's coming from. Uh, the I think we still have to solve it. I don't get me wrong. And uh, I being basically hopeless all my life, uh, uh, really endorse Zizek's idea that hopelessness is the beginning of the change that we need, not doggedly trying to maintain hopefulness. Um, and Western psychology is very interested in around the construction of the self experience. If we reflect on this from the Buddhist point of view, we think that the self is a construction that we make up in every moment, which is different than, say, the Western psychological view that the self is a thing, is a something that you can deconstruct and affect. And the Western versus the Eastern idea of how we perceive and make reality in that Buddhist sense. We do a highly curated selection of mind moments around us based on our preferences. So we are drawn to the things that we prefer and we leave out the things that we don't want. Um, and then we assign meaning to each of these mind moments. So the capacity to sense meets the object of consent. Consciousness of the sensing experience arises, which is before the self experience. The body actually evaluates, I think, mainly for urgency. Does it need immediate attention? Does it not matter whether we ever get to it? Is there time for a pleasant experience? And that creates this cue. Urgent material always skips to the head of the line of these samples of the environment that we take through our senses that are then compared to the perceptual database. This is, again, unconscious and prior to the conscious self experience. And if there's an entry in the database, we define the present moment based on that meaning, which is the conundrum of the human condition, in the sense that time in each moment is only the present, right? There is only the present moment. We don't exist except in the present moment. But the present moment is defined by the past, and part of the past is our expectation of what will happen. So in that present moment experience, it's defined by the past, and we have an expectation of what will happen, which is the future. And they're all happening at the same time. And then we tell the self what's happening, right? Then the mind informs the conscious self experience what's happening. It's like, if to use a computer metaphor, it's the printer. After everything has been done, the data is sent to the printer, and then it peels off, and you look at the image of what reality you've just made. And if you're in the present moment, you have almost enough time to avert a completely boneheaded move. But if you're not paying attention, of course, the body mind just engages in it. It's not that the self makes a reflective decision about what to do and then carries it out. It's actually the fail-safe system mostly. Is that making sense? One of the things about uh, taking care of a child and attending to their needs, um, that core of that is that sense of safety. But it's beyond just the physical body of safety. Really, what is important is that the child is free to express themselves authentically, and that the caregiver creates a space or a container that can hold the expressions of a child, the authentic expressions of a child, so that the child learns that their authentic expression is actually the thing that's of interest, that is of value, and that the caregiver explores with the child what their authentic interest or their authentic meanings are, so that that process of developing your native capacities is what happens. And so often, what happens instead is the caregivers have a preference for how their child should be and what their child should be interested in, and they direct the child toward the thing that they think the child should be doing rather than what is central to the child. And often they demand a kind of responsiveness from the child. And if that contradicts the authentic desire of the child, the authentic interest of the child too much, then the child learns to abandon their authentic self and develop the capacity for inauthenticity. The characteristics of, or that division between secure and insecure attachment is really that division between uh, authentic expression and the value of that authentic expression and the valuing of the inauthentic expression. Disorganized kids, of course, really what it is that happens there is the fearfulness of the caregiver. Typically, the caregiver behaves in a way frightening to the child, and so the child is constantly vigilant in relationship to the caregiver, and they never really settle into a sense of safety, and that space of exploration never really opens up. You know, as young as 10 months, you can take a child through the strain situation and evaluate what their detachment strategy is. You have a 70% chance of using the attachment strategy you had at 10 months all the way through your life. That leaves 30%, of course, where it changes. And one of the arguments around this is that it's so simplistic, and there's a lot of different effects that in terms of the child's engagement of the world after they get out of that early childhood period to the mid-childhood period, and depending on the studies, there's more coherence over time or less. So it's not written in stone. Um, I guess part of it is also luck. You grew up in a family system, and then when you were, what, 4 or 5 years old, or maybe now 3, 4, 5 years old, off you went to preschool or to kindergarten. And how'd you do in kindergarten? Did they think you were the bee's knees and the cool kid, and the peer group really in your peer group enjoyed you and you were included? Or did that not happen? We all, of course, have the capacity for creating these social hierarchies, which we do in every environment we enter into. We create the social hierarchy and then we peg ourselves somewhere in the hierarchy, depending on how well we think we can do in the environment. Uh, what was valuable in the education systems after the Second World War, of course, the standardized testing came in, and the skills that were valuable for business came in, and kids were channeled toward uh, activities and learning that was in line with the interests of the business community and less in line with what uh, the child might be interested in and what might be good at. And the resources were flowed into the kids that did well in that kind of learning, that kind of thinking, away from the kids who didn't naturally fit into that, and it created a social hierarchy around a certain kind of thinking. And a devaluing of other kinds of thinking, even though there's a whole range of thinking capacities, a whole range of interests and capacities in kids. We don't really support that much. We did.
I had this question about the initial meaning. It's almost like a kid is born with inclination towards a particular thing.
Yeah.
Like I thought that even that thing, if that thing is considered conditional, then when I was born and if my caregiver put in front of me a guitar and a piano, like those are the only two that I would choose from. Um,
Which one
so
did you choose?
the guitar,
Ah.
but it's unlikely that I'll be playing the tuba because it was not introduced introduced to me by the caregiver. It was not in the
Right.
option.
There's a wonderful book called Tuba City by Sam Quinones, which you should really read, even if you're not an avid tubist. Um, yeah. Um, the I played the tuba, but do you know that story, right? That's why you're saying the tuba. Um,
I know you do, yeah, but not the book.
um,
Or you think you're born with that karma of the tuba?
I don't know. I know that I enjoyed being musical, and I could play that. Okay. Um, and I still love music, although I don't play anymore. I don't know whether uh, circumstances had been more in line with what mattered to me, uh, that I might still, but the frustration of not being able to explore the stuff that I wanted to became overwhelming. And so I stopped. The frustration by stopping playing, because that was really uh, what I could figure out to do at the time. There is certain responsibilities for the caregivers to keep moving the goalpost for the kid so that the kid is striving and reaching and extending and developing capacities. As you grow, of course, the body is more and more capable, and you want a caregiver that's attentive to that and keeps moving the goalpost, keeps challenging. You want, in some sense, a caregiver who's paying attention to you and wanting through attention for you to do your best. Uh, and they pay attention to whether you're doing your best or not doing your best, and they're supporting you to really come into that place where in each thing you undertake, in each moment, you're doing the best that you can in that moment. Doesn't mean that there's a standard, because it's always a standard achievement level, because each moment is different, obviously, and based on the conditions of each moment. Um, but that's very different from setting the goals that matter to the caregiver and insisting that the child meet those goals, right? It could be goals that the child could meet, um, but have so little interest in that there's no reward for the child in meeting the goals beyond satisfying a demand of the caregiver, or the caregiver moving the goalpost to the point that the child can't reach it, so that goal setting then becomes a mechanism for discouragement, for defeating the child's capacity. Um, but that really takes that attention and interest and the resources that are available to the caregiver flowing into the things that really matter to the child. Do we think that we should be educating our children so that they're competitive in a late capitalist society? Uh, if you were to ask me, I think you probably know, I would say I don't think that that's actually what we should be doing. Uh, I don't think the consumption of this period of civilization is actually sustainable at all, and that the havoc that it's creating is going to be uh, extremely difficult to manage. Uh, and actually, what we should be preparing our children for is not the illusion that this is all going to be solved by technology, which I don't think it will, um, and to find a way of uh, being in relationship to each other, because really, um, we're still living in bodies. The singularity has not happened. We have not been uploaded. And bodies need what bodies need. They just do. And if you don't have that, they're unhappy. And the way that the body lets you know is by being by filling itself with pain. Right? Julie.
Hey, George. So if am I understanding right that if this happens so young, the parenting to where the child is not becoming is doesn't have the environment to become aware of their authentic interests, but rather is responding in the various ways to the parent, then by the time, let's say, I get to fourth grade and get to pick the band instrument that I'm, interested in, I, I have no connection with what my authentic
Yeah, it
uh
can be like that. You could have a hint, an inkling of it that you keep private that might direct you. But if you've completely lost track of it, then you're going to be responding to the person that you need to respond in choosing.
I was just wondering how, like, if I guess it sounds like you could be relative degrees of in uh, in touch with my authentic interests, but how does one, I guess, over the course of life, get back, find some connection to their authentic
I think
interests?
so. Depending on what your attachment conditioning is the place to begin looking. So, for instance, if you grew up and you were dismissing, you would have a sense of what was authentically meaningful to you, but it would be something that you kept a secret from everyone. Really, the stuff that you're unwilling to tell anyone is really the place to begin looking. If you're preoccupied, then what you've been doing is pretending, right? And that really is organized around the enmeshment into someone else and the prediction, your prediction of what would get them to be responsive to you. And so what you do is you pull your attention back into yourself, come into your own mind states, your own feeling states, and begin to examine what would be meaningful for you. And if you've not explored so much, you're not going to have the knowledge already. What you're going to have to do is try different things.
Mm.
So then you're going to play 3 or 4 instruments and see which one felt right. And then in pursuing the instrument that felt more right, you pursue instruments related to that, so that you begin to have a sense of that. Or you'll go hear a piece of music and decide whether it resonated with you or not. And if it did, then that would open up an avenue of exploration that you would go into. One of the things about exploration that is, I guess, one of the early important lessons to learn is that almost all things don't end up with a lot of meaning. And so, in when you understand that that's the nature of exploration, you develop a resiliency and you also pivot fast. This didn't work, pivoting into the next thing. One of the things about beginning to learn exploration is that it takes such effort and pressure to get yourself to do the first step that if there isn't immediate reward and meaning that comes from taking the first step, you're immediately discouraged from taking the second step, even though almost all steps don't lead anywhere. That's the dilemma, right? And so have you heard my Apple story, which I tell?
I don't think so.
I'll tell you. When in 1978, I got clean from the whole cocktail of things that I was managing life with, and and I was really puzzled as what to do next. Right? When you have to acquire things to maintain sanity, you have an agenda. And when you don't have to do that anymore, there's no agenda really. What do I do now? And so I said to the guy that was sponsoring me, to me, what do I do now? Uh, and he said, well, go out and live life. And I said, yeah, I know, but what do I do? He said, well, what kind of apples do you like? And I said, I don't like apples. They're green, they're hard, they're sour. And he said, yeah, Granny Smiths are green and hard and sour, but there's a lot of apples. We really didn't have a lot of apples when I was growing up. And so he said, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the Korean deli, you're going to buy a Granny Smith apple, and you're going to buy any other apple, and you're going to eat them both, and you're going to decide which one you like better. And then the next day, you're going to buy the one you like better and another one. And you're going to do that every day until you've tasted all of the apples in the Korean deli in the 70s in New York. That was like 26 varieties of apples. And so it took about a month. Every day I went and I bought the two apples. Then at the end of it, I liked Gala apples, which I still like. I like Pink Ladies as the second, and I really, which are at the total sweet end of apples. Whereas my mother liked sour apples, and so all the apples we had growing up were on the sour end of the scale. But in discovering the one apple that I really like, I also discovered I didn't like 25 apples that much, right? And that's, I think, is a good metaphor for exploration. Most of the directions you head in will not be fruitful, but they'll give you an inkling of what you need to know to pick the next direction. You do a survey, you take in the data, you make a decision, you take an action, and you make a survey of the data of what happened, make a decision and take an action. That's the process of exploration. But in the beginning, when it's there's so much energy into figuring out what to do, and then you take the step and it doesn't immediately produce something, it can easily translate in your mind to the idea that I'm not doing this right, or I can't do this, or this is beyond me. All of those things that come up, and then uh, don't forget the sophomore slump. Remember when you're a freshman, everything is new, everything is wonderful. You do something two or three times, and your skill jumps an amazing level, and then you hit the sophomore slump where all of that easy stuff you've learned already, and now you have to learn the hard stuff. And then that takes repetition and takes doing it over and over again in order to develop the capacity to do that, which is not so rewarding. And because you made such fast progress in the beginning, when you hit the sophomore slump, you feel like you're not making progress, even though you are, right? And then when you get up to the level of an expert, let's say I've been taking photographs for, I don't know, a long time, maybe 40 or 50 years. I can make a good photograph. I can make a good photograph almost every time. I can make a pretty good photograph almost every time. But to make an exceptional photograph is really hard, right? And it's unusual when that happens, right? Everything just has to come together at that moment and happen. So that means you make a lot of good photographs and very few really good ones. But you can't be discouraged by the abundance of good enough. You have to go for that peak. I guess they used to call it a peak experience, right? There's also the experience of what's culturally valuable and how well what interests you, what matters to you, what is meaningful and enjoyable to you lines up with the cultural values. And the cultural values is an extremely narrow band of interest that's rewarded. Uh, and how do you, and since we're all so conditioned in this sort of ordinary uh, capitalist, the success and the people that are rewarded, particularly at the top of it, it's an unbelievable amount of reward in comparison to what is available for most of the things that you might do. Um, how do you make peace with that? That you're actually engaged in the things that are meaningful to you and satisfying for you, regardless of their uh, position in the social or financial hierarchy. Can you do that, Julie?
Yeah, that question of how do you um know, or well, maybe it's a different question, but I'm still a little bit stuck on how do you know by the time you get to, adulthood and you're wanting to explore authentically, um how can you be sure that you're not just operating in, with that early attachment conditioning of that, like, let's say I try something and, um like the example you just gave a minute ago, it doesn't go great the first time, and so I tell myself, that I can't do it, or I'm not going to be able to do it, or what. And so, like I'm stuck on how do you know you're not just operating in the um same thing that you got when you were a child, in the sense of, I know you said, like, for dismissive, look to what's
When
a
you're keeping
secret.
secret, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. um but okay, well, I just it
How do
seems
you
like.
know is that you engage in the inquiry of what's meaningful to me, and you organize the exploration that you do with that as one of the values that you're tracking.
What's meaningful to me?
Yeah. To me, not to everyone else and not in relationship to everyone else, just to me. What matters to me? What do I enjoy doing, the activity of doing? And what do I derive a sense of fulfillment and meaning from doing, regardless of the response from you know the wider culture and the individual societies down to my uh, peer group. Obviously, with a peer group, you're going to be engaging in an exploration and you're going to be relying on them to support you to explore. And where that really is going to take off in relationship is because you're exploring something that is, and what you discover is actually useful to them, and what they're exploring and discovering, and what they're discovering is actually useful to you. So that in the exchange, which is part of the process of exploration, you go out and discover what it is that matters to you, and you come back and express it to the people in your circle. And then they learn from that and use it in their exploration. And then they come back from what they're exploring and they express it to you, and you learn from that. And that synergy that develops between the exchanges, that's vital to each of you, because it allows you to go further than you would have gone if you didn't have that information, is uh, a piece. But at the end of the day, it's the thing that provides that sense of fulfillment for you that matters. And most of us are going to be in a position where that isn't remunerative, particularly. And so we're going to have some source of support for our primary exploration, and it's easy enough to get bogged down in the secondary exploration, the gathering of time, energy, and resources, that there isn't much left for the primary exploration. And because it's often a cost rather than a benefit, uh, we can justify not doing it. But then, and if that were it, I think that's what people would do. They do it anyway. But then the despair of life not being meaningful enough grabs you. And as you age, of course, and you have less capacity and less energy, if you don't really organize it so that you're still able to engage in the stuff that's meaningful, the aging just becomes an unbearable burden. And, distraction only works while you're distracted. Our whole culture is based on the distraction. As I like to say, I subscribe to like 9 streaming services and there's still nothing on. So, anyway, why don't we do a little bit of practice? What would you like to do? What's 3? IPF? Would you like to do some IPF? All right. So go ahead and settle in. Okay. Let the scene fade, finding your way out of there. I'll count from 5 to 1. When I reach 1, you'll be fully present, fully awake. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fully awake, settle in the experience. How's that? So,
Got a quick question.
sure.
Within the scenes, the exploration saturates very quickly. I've done one play is over, and I was wondering and I feel like stuck at that point.
Do you then begin another one?
I mean, so there's a conscious change of scene, is it? I just keep changing to something else.
Ideally, it would flow one thing into the next. So you're doing something, and then the mind just naturally associates and carries you to something else. And so you move from thing to thing.
I'm not sure what else to explore, basically, at that point with them. Feel safe with them. But
As a child, do you remember what you explored when you were a child?
maybe football, but
So then maybe go older each time, say 3 or 4 years older until you're at the age you are now.
so it could be present moment exploration as well.
Sure.
Okay.
You know, in the development of that visualization, we start as a young child and then we add 3 or 4 years and explore, and then add 3 or 4 years and explore until you reach the age you are now, typically.
It's amazing how language, growing up in India, it was a different culture and language.
Yeah.
So I'm like, should I imagine like Indian parents? That's always something that have intrigued me.
Yes, why not? And imagine start in the childhood experience that you actually had.
I don't have a clear memory of that.
So then imagine the childhood that you had.
I think
Or
that's what you said.
imagine the childhood that you would have liked to have had.
Like to have had.
And remember, there's no practical limit. You could be flying around if you wanted.
Okay. Thank you.
Be jumping off skyscrapers and having helicopters swoop in and save you at the last second. Whatever you want.
I don't know how that would that help. I've thought about that, but it's just a visual, but not a grounded feeling.
Yeah. The yeah. Where do you want to go? And see if you can go.
Hey, George, if you are using your present day age to imagine, do you then imagine the ideal parent figures older or the same age?
Mine don't age.
Okay.
But then
So,
mine aren't, so they're not lifelike. They're cartoon-like.
oh,
Uh,
okay.
so, and I'm my ideal parent figures are more a felt sense or a tactile sense than a visual image. Uh,
Okay.
so it's a feeling more than it is an appearance in that way.
Okay. Interesting. So their age doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, they're essentially line drawings, animated line drawings, sometimes with a
Mhm.
little watercolor.
Okay.
Um, and then my when I was a child, I always liked the fabrics that my mother chose, and I always liked the fabrics that my dad's suits were made out of. And so a lot of it is the feeling, uh, the sense memory of the
Mhm.
texture of the fabric, if that makes sense. Um, so what are the elements that uh, have that comfort and soothing aspect to it? Which I remember my mother subscribed to magazines, a lot of magazines when we were kids. And so I really enjoyed looking at the magazines. And so that there was a, an original structure of fondness of caregivers. I had to reach for where that would be, but that was one of the things
Mhm.
that was there.
So you are drawing some from your actual childhood.
Yeah, what the definitions of, I mean, what we're trying to get at is the longing for what care that you wanted as a child, right? That's the
Mhm.
origin of it. So, what is that care that you wanted, and how did you imagine it? Um, so I,
Mm.
in some sense, animated the illustrations from 40s home and garden magazines that
Mm.
were around the house. That's how I came up with an ideal parent.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So tomorrow, Kaleidoscope is meeting, which is our monthly gathering. If you're available for that, it's at 11 a.m. Pacific. And then on Saturday, we're doing an exploration um, uh, day long, so from 9 till 1. We've done quite a few of these, and so what we're going to be doing going forward is focusing on particular topics. And so we have a topic for this day long, which I wonder if I can remember or look up. Uh, the topic is reawakening authentic exploration, and so uh, it it probably the reason why the end of today's talk went the direction it is I've been thinking about this for a few days since I'm going to teach it on Saturday. But we will do some dyads as well, which I think will be helpful. And then I think that's mainly what's coming up. If you're in New York, I'm going to be teaching at New York Insight on Saturday, the 11th of April. I'm going to be talking about meditation and attachment there. And then I will also be back there in September teaching meditation and addiction. And then in June, I will be teaching in San Francisco. We'll do a level 1 in June as well. So that's the stuff that's coming up. It's on the website. Take a look. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope if you're resourced and can make a donation, you will. It helps support me and also the work that Mettagroup is doing. Really appreciate your practice, and I hope to see you soon. Bye now.